Who are the favorites to win a national title? Who can legitimately be called a contender? Who has the pieces to make a run to the Final Four? We'll break that all down for you over the next 3 weeks in our Contender series. Last week, we gave you our Final Four sleepers and talked about 6 different Final Four contenders: Louisville, West Virginia, Villanova, Wichita State, USC and Miami, that are just flawed enough that we can't call them contenders. There is a pretty clear-cut delineation between the 4 or 5 best teams, the clear national title challengers, and the rest of the country this season. This week, we will be taking a deeper dive into 5 of those teams. What makes them good enough to win a national title? But why won't they win a national title? After looking at Kentucky, Kansas and Arizona, we're on to my pick to win the national title, the Michigan State Spartans. More the enigma of Miles Bridges. NBC Sports preseason All-American team Miles Bridges. Rob Kurjati images why they will win. We should start with Miles Bridges here, shouldn't we? Bridges is the NBC Sports preseason National Player of the Year. He averaged 16.9 points, 8.3 boards, 2.1 assists and 1.5 steals while shooting 38.9% from 3 on more than 5 threes per game as a freshman. He was a top 10 pick in last year's loaded NBA draft, and he made the decision to return to school. That doesn't happen all that often, so it should come as no surprise that Bridges will enter the year as a potential top 5 pick and the star of a team everyone believes will be in the top 5. Who has the best player in college basketball is a great starting point for trying to figure out who are the best teams in college basketball, and Bridges, on paper, is a good bet to be the best player in college basketball. But there is more to this than the simple fact that Tom Izzo more or less lucked his way into not only having the local 5-star prospect pick the Spartans over the likes of Kentucky, but then opt to stay with the Spartans over heading to the NBA draft. Bridges is so perfect for the way that Izzo wants to play. He's arguably the best athlete in all of college basketball. He can guard 3s and 4s. He can protect the rim. He attacks the glass, particularly on the offensive end of the floor, and he can get out and run in transition. Defense, rebounding and the transition game are staples of the teams Izzo wants at his disposal, and Bridges can do all 3 things well. Then throw in the rest of the Michigan State front court. Nick Ward is a throwback. He's a 6'8", 260-pound left-handed behemoth that is impossible to stop only on one on the block. He averaged 13.9 points in less than 20 minutes as a freshman. Freshmen aren't supposed to do that. Sophomores aren't either. Ward will be paired up front with Jaren Jackson, who couldn't be a more perfect complement to Ward and Bridges. He's a 6'11" power forward with all the skills you expect out of a modern power forward. He protects the rim, he rebounds, and he can space the floor offensively with his 3-point shot. He may not have the hype of some of the other big men in the 2017 recruiting class, but he projects as a one-and-done lottery pick all the same. I still haven't even mentioned Xavier Tillman, another Land Warrior freshman in the front court. He may surprise some people this season. Throw in Ben Carter, Gavin Schilling and Kenny Goins, and there may not be a more talented and deep front line in the country. The backcourt is where the issues lie. We'll get to that in a second, but there are some things to like about this group. For starters, both Cassius Winston and Joshua Langford were top 30 recruits in the class of 2016. Neither were all that impressive during their first year in East Lansing, but the best thing about freshmen is that they become sophomores. Langford shot 41.6% from 3 last year, and Winston averaged 5.2 assists in just over 20 minutes. They are talented and they should continue to improve. Lural's Tum Tum Nairn Jr. is back for his senior season, and his ability to push the ball in transition has made him a favorite of Izzo, while Matt McQuaid is somehow only a junior. Assuming that both Winston and Langford take a fairly significant step forward, Nairn and McQuaid will be rotation players off the bench, and if that is the case, this Spartan roster looks as strong as any roster in the country. Big Ten Preview, ACC Preview, Atlantic 10 Preview, Mountain West Preview. Nick Ward, Ray Del Rio. Getty Images. Why they want when there are 2 real concerns that I have with this Michigan State team heading into next season. The first, believe it or not, is with Bridges. I don't see any way that you can question his ability. He's a monster. But part of what made him just so effective as a freshman was because he is the prototype for what you look for in a college for in modern, read small ball, basketball. He's big enough to guard power forwards defensively. He rebounds the ball, he protects the rim, he can switch on to anyone defensively, and he just so happens to be a perimeter player on the other end of the floor. In other words, he can guard college power forwards, but they cannot guard him. That is an incredibly valuable weapon for a team like Michigan State to have. And as a sophomore, he won't be taking advantage of that versatility in the same way. He'll likely end up playing the majority of his minutes at the 3. Jaren Jackson is too good to keep on the floor, particularly when it would mean playing Matt McQuaid of Tum Naran over him, but Jackson is a full-blown power forward. It begs the question, just how effective is Bridges going to be if he is playing at the 3? Will it be easier for college small forwards to cover him? Will he be able to take them into the paint if Ward is already occupying space down there? And what about his three-point shot? He made 38.9% as a freshman, but how many of those were a result of getting clean looks at the rim? Because the power forwards guarding him didn't know how to guard a player like that on the perimeter. I don't think this will end up being an issue. Hell, we have Bridges as the preseason National Player of the Year, but it will definitely be something to monitor moving forward. Final Four sleepers: Louisville, Villanova, West Virginia, USC, Wichita State, Miami, Cassius Winston, Michael Reeves. JT Images. The bigger question mark, however, will likely end up being Winston, and to a lesser degree Langford. I love Tum. I wrote a story on him when he was still in high school. His name is awesome. He's a terrific personality with the kind of backstory that makes you want to root for him. But he's just not good enough to be the starting point guard for a team with national title aspirations. Last season, Naran started 30 games at the point. Winston started 5, and while Izzo had found ways to manufacture minutes for the duo to play together later in the season, this much was clear: there was something that the Hall of Fame head coach didn't quite trust about Winston. Maybe it was his 23% turnover rate. Maybe it was Winston's issues on the defensive end of the floor, or the fact that he didn't lead the way that Izzo wanted his point guards to. Most likely it was all of the above, and as a sophomore, those are issues that Winston will have to fix. And I think that he will. Again, Michigan State is a consensus top 3 team for a reason. They're my pick to win the national title this season. But I can certainly tell myself a story where the Spartans don't quite come together, and it starts with Winston's issues at the point. Langford I am less worried about. He will mostly be fine. Yes, he needs to be more aggressive as a scorer, and we saw some of that late in the season. But mostly he needs to be a guy that can knock down open shots, provide a consistent defensive threat, and be a threat in transition, whether he's spotting up for a 3 or finishing at the rim. He will be, at best, the third option for these Spartans offensively, and I don't think it will be that hard for him to fill that role. Miles Bridges. J. Pat Carter. JT Images. Prediction: Michigan State is my pick to win the national title. I'm sure I won't be the only one to say that between now and the start of the season. And as good as Tom Izzo is, it's worth noting that when he has had a team projected as a title contender, the season usually ends up being disappointing. Since the Spartans won the title in 1999, there have been 4 seasons where they were considered to be a favorite to win the title at some point during the season. In 200,910, they were number 2 in the preseason top 25 and limped their way to a number 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. They would eventually get to the Final Four in Detroit that year. In 201,011, they were again the preseason number 2 team in the country and finished the year 1915 with a loss to UCLA in the first round of the NCAA tournament. In 201,314, they were the preseason number 2 team yet again, living up to the hype for most of the year until a wrist injury suffered by point guard Keith Appling derailed their season. Sparty still found a way to win the Big Ten tournament and get to the Elite Eight. Then in 201,516, the Spartans quickly emerged as one of the nation's best team before losing to Middle Tennessee State in the first round of the NCAA tournament as a number 2 seed. Will this be the year that bucks that trend?